This is the Little Moments Count radio podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.
It's a good day to be Indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut. He didn't cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, Kadagi to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. Hey, we discuss local, national, Native news and events, and as you know, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues. Hey, this episode of Native Roots Radio is presented in partnership with Little Moments Count and Minnesota Public Radio. Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focused on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of life. And for more information, you can visit littlemomentscount.org. And I have Susan Beaulieu on here. Welcome, Susan. Thank you so much for coming on Native Roots Radio and talking about your journey. I was reading your bio here, and I think I'm going to read a little bit. Susan Beaulieu, she, her is a Anishinaabe and a citizen of Red Lake. And later on, Susan, we're going to have Bob Blake from Red Lake on the show. So this is going to be a Red Lake show. And in the northern part of Minnesota, she worked directly with Indigenous communities for nearly 2 decades in a variety of capacities, including a project in curriculum development, training, and facilitations. Her focus in the last 12 years has been helping communities, organizations, and individuals understand the impacts of unresolved ancestral and collective traumas. And I really appreciate that, because I really, being in the community, Susan, we know a lot of our relatives, including me, are still suffering from trauma that's been let down. And I just want to welcome you to Native Roots Radio, and thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, miigwech for inviting me, Robert, and I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Well, I want to get right into it because we only have a short time. It's like, with your experience, I want to know how tough how tough experience can affect our child's brain, and we talk about trauma that's been handed down either through physical birthing trauma, but also learned trauma. Let's talk a little bit about that and the signs that family might notice.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. It's live radio. We love that. It's cool.
Yeah, speaking of kiddos, one of them just opened up the door and then skedaddled because they saw me on. So your question was around how tough experiences impact the development of the brain. Was that right, Robert?
Yes. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's really fascinating. So I'll preface this by saying I'm not a neuroscientist. Maybe in my next life I will be, because I find the brain fascinating. But what's really important to understand is that our experiences, that's okay, thank you. Our experiences wire our brains. So our brains are wired through our experiences. And one of the things that I want to add that I learned, it was during COVID, I attended online the International Trauma Conference. And one of the things that struck me was that it's not just the experiences that we have that wire our brain, but also the experiences our mother had. So if our mother had a lot of adverse childhood experiences, a lot of trauma that she experienced that she didn't have an opportunity to heal from, her nervous system is going to be more easily dysregulated, which means she's going to have those stress hormones coursing through her body, coursing through the baby's body and brain during development. And that literally wires and impacts the way that the brain develops. And so one of the things that I remember them saying that was absolutely, it blew my mind is that constant fight, flight response and those stress hormones that the mom is under during the development of her baby in utero. The baby's brain gets the message that they will be born into a dangerous environment or world. And so rather than having the neurons that would normally migrate up to the prefrontal cortex, that's our logical, rational thinking part of the brain, more of those neurons are kept in the part of the brain for fight, flight. So that impacts over the long term, that child's ability to wire their brain for prefrontal cortex, which that's our logical, rational thinking part of the brain, our ability to regulate, our ability to learn, to use language, all of that is in the prefrontal cortex. So it's just fascinating that even the experiences of our mothers and the traumas that they had begins to wire our brains even in utero. And so other things that impact the developing brain is if a baby is crying, they're hungry, they're tired, they're wet, those things. And when they get soothed right away, when they get fed, when they get supported, their brains learn that the world is a safe place. They learn that they can rely on other people. When those needs aren't met, their brains get wired to believe that the world's not a safe place and they can't rely on people. And so, I mean, that has all sorts of implications and we can talk about some of that, but those are just some of the first things that come to mind.
Well, Susan, I'm getting a little emotional here in all seriousness because I'm an adoptee and my birth mother was 14 and the trauma that she went through, there's no pictures of us. I was adopted when I was 18 months old. So I am kind of getting emotional here because it's come up lately and I'm 64 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. And your mom, her brain was far from developed. That too, right? Like our brains don't develop till our mid-20s. Late 20s typically for males, mid 20s typically for females. And so just thinking about all that your mom had went through and how that got passed down epigenetically, energetically, but also in the way that your brain was wired. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of worried about people leaving still to this day for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it was interesting as you were talking because I was thinking about some of the things that I've talked about in therapy, and that's come up where I personally probably have not looked at that.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanna bring in, Robert, is I feel like so often we hear things like, "Oh, kids are so resilient, and they won't remember. They're too little to remember." But the truth is that it does wire our brains. It is stored in our body. There is a remembering of it, even if it's not at a conscious cognitive level. And so when I think about the importance of healing, it is for not just ourselves and our families that are here today, but also those yet to come, and then the other thing is that Indigenous people, we know time is not quite a linear thing. And when we heal here, we also help heal our ancestors. And so I just want, that the invitation into healing is not necessarily an easy one, but boy, is it powerful. The ripples that it can have in our own lives, in our families, in our communities, backwards and forwards. And so, what that healing looks like is different for every person, but just really, I think it's so beautiful that you're in therapy and you're noticing these things. And it sounds like you're really trying to figure out, like, how do you begin to shift some of these patterns and beliefs and behaviors that are ingrained, some of your own experience, some is ancestral experience, right? And sometimes it's hard to tease that apart, especially in things like talk therapy, which is why other modalities like somatic practices, tuning into the wisdom of the body, breath work, visualization, there's so many pathways to healing, including many of our own beautiful ceremonies and practices. And It really is an invitation to explore like what resonates with us and how do we do more of those things that feel supportive for us, for our nervous systems, for our body, our heart, our mind, and our spirit.
I didn't want to make this about me, but breaking the cycle. We saw our grandchildren today. We see them Wednesday and Thursday, and they're having such a different experience than even my children had. So they're happy to see us, and we're happy to see them and be part of their life. And so I hope I didn't hijack our segment there, but it really struck me.
Not at all, and I'm really glad that it resonated, that it struck you, and thank you for your courage in sharing that part of your story.
Hey, we'll be right back. This is Native Roots Radio.
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot. Hey, welcome back, everyone. I am here with Susan Beaulieu, and this is an episode of Native Roots Radio is presented in partnership with Little Moments Count and Minnesota Public Radio. Welcome back. And I didn't want to really make this about me, but it really struck me with your work and how healing comes in different ways. But also, I guess what we want to talk about, too, is how basically, we can be on the alert where people do need help, where our young ones are acting out a little bit. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what an ACE score is and go from there.
Yeah. So I got trained in ACEs as an ACE interface presenter, ACE interface maybe 12 years ago or so. And up until that point, I hadn't heard of ACEs, but when I did, it really helped me connect the dots between the historical trauma that our communities had experienced and how that led to ACEs and ACEs cycles in our families and communities today. So ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. There are 10 original ACEs in the original ACEs study under sort of like three categories. So you have abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And I won't get into what all of the ACEs are. You can look it up. You can type in like find my ACE score, and it'll show like a 10 questionnaire that you can just, say yes or no to. And for everything you say yes to, you give yourself 1 point. So you can get up to an ACE score of 10. Now, after having done this work for a while, one of the things that I want to, there's a couple of things that I want to say about this. One is that when they did the ACEs study, it's what's called an epidemiological study. So they were looking at a population. They weren't looking at individuals. So sometimes people take the ACE score thing and they think, oh, I have an 8 out of 10, or I have a 10 out of 10. Like I'm, and then they began to create stories around that. But some of the things I want to bring up is that ACEs are not the only story. There are also positive childhood experiences that we can have that can offset ACEs, and we can talk a little bit about that as well. But the other thing is that the ACEs themselves don't define who we are or how we show up in this world, right? So just because somebody had a particular traumatic thing that happened, depending on the age that they were, depending on the gender, depending on what part of the brain was developing at the time, depending on the type of trauma, all of those things will impact how that ACE might show up in a young person's life. So it can get pretty complex, but I think that overall the story of it is that we know that traumatic experiences, and especially in early childhood when the brain is developing rapidly, is really impactful. And the more that we can do to buffer that through relationship, through attunement with that baby, with that little one, those are things that are going to be really protective for them.
Wow. So we find out that there is some sort of issue, and then what we do is we need to take action, and part of the action is the healing journey, and I believe, and let's talk a little bit about that, because we're always into solutions here.
Yeah, I would love to, because when I first got trained in ACEs, I sort of was thinking like, oh, if people just know about this, then things will change. And I even thought that about myself. I'm a mother myself. I have 4 children. My oldest is 26, a 15-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. I'm a very, very different mom now than I was with my oldest. And can I share a really quick story about an aha I had as a mother? So my daughter, Sophia, and she gave me permission to share this story, but my daughter, Sophia, when she was maybe about 7, I was doing work in White Earth. We were doing the Tribal Neurosciences and Community Wisdom Project around ACEs, neuroscience, epigenetic, ACEs, and resilience. And it was during the summer, and we were coming home from there, and she was, she had brought stuff with her to do in the car. And so I'm driving, and all of a sudden I start feeling this like tightness in my belly. And I'm a pretty empathic person. I tend to feel energy pretty easily. And so I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw her in the back. She was really upset. And I was like, hey, Sophia, what's going on? And she was explaining to me, she was trying to build a house out of Legos on her lap, but she had nothing solid to build it on. And so they were falling apart. She was getting upset. And I was like, well, I was just learning about practices. So I was like, well, let's do some breathing. So I was like, follow me. I was trying to do some deep, soft belly breathing with her, and she's back there going, and she's like getting more and more activated, and I can feel it in my nervous system. And so I was like, that's okay. You don't have to do it. But I was so overwhelmed myself by her big emotion that in that moment, I only had 2 options. And those options were based on the options that the ways that my parents responded when I was having big emotions. One parent would get really angry, get upset, shut me down, right? Not a big deal, blah, 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 blah. And then you'd like just shut down. The other parent, they would shut down. But the thing about it, and so this is what I did. I thought, okay, I'm just going to shut down because I don't want to yell at her. I don't want to get upset. But in that moment, I was so aware, Robert, that I was still sending the message to her that her big emotions were not okay. And if she wanted to stay in connection with me, she had to shut those emotions down. And I realized in that moment, I had to learn how to be able to sit with my own big emotions, to regulate my own nervous system so that I could be there to support her and her siblings when they were having big emotions.
That's interesting because as you were speaking, I was thinking about the parents' big emotion too. And you did mention that. And I remember, I told you I was 64 years old. And I remember one of the big bad things that could really turn into something is spilling milk.
Yes.
Just in how the big emotions come from your parents and how to deal with that. And so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of times, we want to focus on what can we do to support the kids. And the truth is the most powerful thing we can do to support our kiddos is to learn how to regulate our own nervous systems, to become aware of what's coming up for us, of what's needed for us to be able to regulate. One of the most powerful tools we have to influence our nervous system is our breath. And so a really powerful breath practice is a simple, like soft belly breathing. A lot of times when I facilitate things, I'll tell people like, take a deep breath, and they go, and it's all in the chest. And so there's a really important nerve called the vagal nerve that connects to from the back of the brain around the heart. It connects into every major organ in our torso, including wrapping around our stomach. So when we take those slow, deep belly breaths, it vibrates that vagal nerve, which then sends the message to the brain that we're safe. Because if we were running or fighting for our life, we couldn't take that slow, deep belly breath. So soft belly breathing, like that was one of the first things that I started doing. And I use it every single day. And what's really interesting is my kiddos, when I first started using it, they'd be like, oh, mom's upset, right? And so one of the things that's important too is normalizing we all have big emotions. None of us, we're human. None of us are immune to big emotions. And so they're like, yep, I'm feeling upset right now. I'm trying to regulate my nervous system. And so just doing that repeatedly. And can I share one more really quick story?
Definitely.
So I was cooking dinner one night, and this was probably like 3 years ago. So my little guy, who's 7 now, he was 4, and his sister, who's a little bit older than him, she was 8. And she was really upset about something. She has really big emotions. She's a deep feeler. I'm cooking supper, like things are boiling on the stove. And I hear her really upset. And I literally cannot leave to go in there. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll finish this up quick and I'll go in there. And all of a sudden I hear her little brother, her 4-year-old brother. And he says, "It's okay, Lydia. Let's do some deep breathing." So they do some deep breathing together. And after about a minute, I hear him say, "There, do you feel better?" Right? So the power of modeling that for our kids, and then also practicing with them, So yes, absolutely.
We're really winding up here. I got to have you on again. I feel one of the things I wanted to say too about breathing, being a former brass player, is that in learning how to breathe is yawning. If you yawn, that's the proper way to take a deep breath and fill up your diaphragm as opposed to your chest. Absolutely.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe this. I can't believe time's flown this fast. Maybe I can hold you on. I haven't seen Bob jump on yet. I want you to, we got a minute left. I want you just to say whatever you want in regards to this.
Yeah. This journey can be a tough one, but what I can tell you, I've been on a really deep healing journey for the last 10 years. And I could not imagine the way that, the beautiful things that can unfold as we engage in our healing journey, both for ourselves, especially for our kiddos. I mean, I am seeing patterns breaking. I am seeing ripples in my extended family. Don't underestimate the power of your own healing. And really, my kids were my motivation to begin the healing journey. And then there came a point where I began to believe, I'm worth it, right? I'm worth doing the work. And when I do the work, everyone benefits. So,
Well, healing is contagious. And I think we've talked a lot about the negative side, but also healing is contagious too.
Absolutely.
And can be passed down. Wow, Susan, I really do want to get you back on the show here. I really appreciate it. Yeah. This was a great. It was a good session for me.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you again for having me. And I do look forward to joining you again. Thank you, Robert.
Right on. Susan Beaulieu, thank you so much. Hey, this is Native Roots Radio. If you're listening to the show, you're part of the resistance. From Chief Plenty Coops, the ground on which we stand on is sacred ground. It's the blood of our ancestors. We need to resist, divest, join a group, run for office, and vote, and go to No Kings and go Vikings. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count radio podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.